Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for coming to this public lecture. So we want to warmly welcome you to this public lecture event. This public lecture event is jointly organized by NUS Alumni Relations, NUS College, and NUS Residential College 4. My name is Peter Pang. I'm the Master of Residential College 4. I have the privilege of introducing the speaker, but before I do so, let me acknowledge the company that enabled such an event, right? And this is the Ngee Kongsi. Through a munificent gift from the Ngee Kongsi, NUS was able to establish the Ngee Kongsi Distinguished Professorship. In the last 10-15 years, the NAK Distinguished Professorship has enabled NUS to appoint a string of eminent academics to NUS, benefiting the whole NUS community. The incumbent Ngee Kongsi Distinguished Professor at NUS right now is Professor Maharaj Pandit, our speaker today. We call him Raj, so I'm just going to call him Raj. Raj is fully worthy of the honor of being the NAK Distinguished Professor. Raj has received so many accolades that I'm not going to read them out because otherwise we'll never be able to go home tonight, right? I will just mention two things. So in 2015 and 2016, he was a fellow at the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Studies at Harvard University. As a Radcliffe fellow, he had time to finish his book. Actually, that's the reason why he was awarded the Radcliffe Fellowship. So his book, Life in the Himalaya, was published by Harvard University Press in 2017. And I had the privilege of reading that book cover to cover. Then I asked him some questions, and then he will tell me, Peter, you didn't read my book carefully enough. So sorry, lor. In 2022, he was elected International Honorary Member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. And he has accomplished many, many things. I'm just not going to go into it. Raj is a true scholar. So we have the benefit of hosting him at RC4, right, as NAK Distinguished Professor. And so we have frequent conversations with him. Every conversation with Raj is a master class. And the conversations range over a wide array of topics, from intermittent fasting to the poetry of Emily Dickinson. Yeah. So Raj's research for the last few decades has focused on Himalaya, and he looks at various issues of Himalaya from multiple disciplines. And he takes a systems integrative approach, right? So today it's a real privilege for all of us, I think, to hear from Raj, and he will tell us about why the formation of the Himalaya mountain range 40-50 million years ago is still relevant and important to each and every one of us here today. Professor Pandit, please.
Thanks. This will not be counted in my time. All right. So at the outset, I would like to express my deep gratitude to the donors of NAK visiting professor for their generosity and their vision. I would also like to express my sincere gratitude to the NUS management, to the management of RC4, Master Prof Pang, who is here, to the management of NUSC, NUS College, to Prof. Loy, who's there, and the NUS Alumni Relations Office, for providing me this opportunity to be with you tonight. It's a proud honor and pleasure for me. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As is evident from the title of my talk, I will be covering most of these keywords: life, collisions, birth, death, and healing. If you do not like the title, I will tell you who to blame at the end. Now, Arun, where are you? Where are you? Okay. If you do not like the blurb which was sent to you, then that also I will tell you at the end of the lecture. Is Peter Pang here? Yeah. Okay. No. Okay. Loy as well. Yeah. I was thinking about design. We will blame it on him. Okay. I will sort of, during this talk, I will try to connect very disparate aspects of these words that you are, expressions which you are, in a sense, they reflect my own journey, at least significant part of my journey in the Himalaya. My tryst with the Himalaya, if I may say, started very early. It started with a conflict, basically. A conflict was not between, it wasn't my conflict, it was conflict on the Himalaya between my mother and my geography teacher. So since then, I have been fascinated by this conflict. I haven't stopped loving my mother, and since then, of course, and I haven't stopped loving my teacher, geography teacher. So anyway, but briefly about public lectures, they are a very wonderful opportunity to sort of bring to people who have not had the misfortune of being in your class, so you catch them in public. But it's difficult because you have to sort of concretize academic jargon into simpler kind of narration, so that you are not, neither those are the listeners are lost nor you are lost. But in any case, I prefer storytelling in science. So stories, they are retained. The jargon can go wherever you want. To end this part of, I have just started, to end this part of my story, Peter said a lot of things about me, my research and things like that. But I thought, while I was coming here, I thought that what is this research as an enterprise? I thought that it is some kind of sorcery, a kind of a witchcraft which is full of, please be mindful, or there will be a lot of researchers and youngsters listening to this. Small malices, maneuvering content, contexts and people, transparent oppression, and consent to abuse. That's research. But then one day, magic happens. Let's try. Often people ask me, why Himalaya? Of course, as you would believe me, and that's true, the earth before and after the birth of Himalaya was very different. Not only was it a predominant geophysical feature on earth, but it also shaped future of human civilization. I will not go into details, but if time permits, I will talk about it. And it significantly impacted the global and regional climate. It's a global biodiversity hotspot, and it has the highest number of biomes on Earth, more than Amazon. Geologically very youngest means just about 50 to 60 million years, but the tallest up to 8,000 plus meters, and biologically nowhere on the Earth is that gradient. It's the longest biological gradient on Earth. Yet slightly lesser known than other important, and then it has high species endemism. I will come to that later. Importantly, 10 major river systems rise from these mountain ranges, extended mountain ranges. And outside of the two poles, it has the highest ice fields, 45 to 60,000 square kilometers. About 1.5 billion people depend on agriculture, water, energy on this in South Asia and Southeast Asia. And it happens to be the warmest mountain on Earth. Above all, that's my home. That's why. It literally is my home. This is my village. And this mountain that you see there, that was always visible from my window. So this mountain is more inside me, as I say in my book, rather than outside. So that's why it has stayed with me. In any case, let's go to the first part, the collisions. Now, you can see about 200 million years ago, this is the kind of Earth we had. About 150, West Gondwana broke from the East Gondwana. Left by about 100 million years, Indian plate moved north. Africa moved west. Seychelles also remained there. Australia moved east. And by about 50 million years, India had, reached something, slightly very close to what Eurasian plate or where the Chinese plate is. This is more of the same thing. But importantly, what had happened, that it was a period of great upheaval, very great upheaval. You can imagine two important continents, they banging against each other. If 50 million years was to be converted into a 5-minute movie, you would see it would be really, really violent. And so Indian plate had traveled about 4,000 miles at different speeds, to begin with 4.5 centimeters to about 18 centimeters a year. Currently it is moving about 1 to 2 centimeters a year, pushing further up. Not only did it move, it rotated as well. If you see here, it was moving like this to begin with, then it rotated anti-clockwise because it had to fit in this. So it had a tryst with its destiny with China. Now, one thing that happened, you can imagine now, and I want all of you to do this experiment. Just bring your palms together like this and just push them against each other. Just push. Keep pushing. What happens? Then it comes up. That's what happened. Indian plate was denser plate, so it went down. So much so that Indian plate lost about 4.7 million square kilometers. It went underneath. Okay? So 4.7 square kilometers was lost to subduction. It went underneath. And India's current area is 3.2. So we had actually lost. For the production of Himalaya and Tibet, we lost 60% of our land. So a friend of mine, many years back, I wouldn't identify the friend, said that, what has India got to do with Tibet? We have lost 60%, man. 60% of land for Tibet. You are asking me, what has India got to do with Tibet? In any case. All right. Okay. But, of course, it was a great loss, but it was a long-term investment. The long-term investment was that we had a mighty wall, okay, which has been ever since, though it was buoyant to begin with, ever since it has been absolutely benign. So you have a wall which ensures that Central Asia becomes dry. We have all the rains. So we get all the monsoon. Prior to that, there was no monsoon. Okay? So we get all the monsoon. It's a natural refrigerator at the top of India. And not only is it a refrigerator, it also has a water pipe attached to it, cool water. So you can drink. So we have a refrigerator, cool water, and also it has another chamber where there is permanent ice. Okay? So the ice is there on top of it, which ensures that there is perennial rivers, there are more rain, we have more water, sediments. Because when India was traveling, so there was a trench left between, the two plates. For millions of years, it took rains and glaciers to fill that trench. That is how the Indo-Gangetic plains came about. That Indo-Gangetic plain is full of silt which came down from, or sediment that came from Himalaya. And that became the pull for people who were traveling from North Africa, or the Horn of North Africa. Okay? And then, now briefly I want to tell you that when the first humans must have seen Himalaya, what would have they felt? Of course, they would have been intimidated, clearly. So what they did was, just to sort of get rid of that intimidation, they started building temples. They wanted to challenge the mountain that, look here, we can make you. Okay? And the guys who were living in the south, they saw the mountains triangular. So their temples were triangular, okay? Like triangular shape. Those who were on the other part, or the northern part, they saw flat. Tibet mostly flat. So they made temples flat. Okay? And people who were in between, so they made temples which had both flat as well as triangular structures. All right. It also did something else. This is perhaps the oldest ode this is Kalidasa's ode in Kumarasambhava. He says that this mountain, of course he calls it the measuring rod of earth, but he also says that it sinks to the eastern and the western sea. He says this is the only mountain that connects eastern and the western sea. He, of course, also wrote something, about birches and, minerals which are there. And he, of course, said that these birch, that time, love letters were written on birch bark. And so letters of love, unfortunately, in 21st century, people have forgotten to write love letters. All right. And this was in 4th and 5th century. This is a minor anecdote which I want to share with you. I was lecturing at MIT while in 2016, and I showed this picture that this is the only sea this is the only mountain which merges into Pacific and Atlantic on that side. Then one of my hosts there, Oliver Yagutz, he said you are making it's a fib. You are making it up. Nobody could have said it in 4th and 5th century. I said, though somebody has said it, it's written there. In any case. How did he know? I have no idea. Let me now get back to the first part. Now, when is a species born? When do we see that a species is born? Because people might argue that, an individual is born, of course. How can a species be born? Okay? Well, the answer to that question is that when an individual starts not looking like either of the parents, then that could be a species. some funny things happen, but in this case, I'm sorry, that's not the species. But this is different species. So a new species is born when, that's why this question of egg and chicken and egg is a futile question. It's a senseless question. Because it doesn't work like that. The parents remain same. It's the child who turns different. Okay. Now, these are plants. You can look at them. You will all know that they are rhododendrons by looking at them. Notwithstanding what Peter thinks about rhododendrons, they are different species. They are beautiful. Then, now the next question is, how do these species arise? How do these new species arise? Of course, there are several ways. There are several biologists possibly here. I wouldn't venture into that. Here, I will be restricting myself only to one aspect or two aspects. That is how, when populations, they go to different places, and then geographical barriers come up between them, then they become new species. So that's what I will do. And which areas are the areas where you should concentrate to look for birth of new species or new species where you can find them? So endemism. Endemism means that a species, where is it born? It's only there. It doesn't go anywhere. It just refuses to go anywhere else. Okay? So they are the best. So if you already know that this particular species has born here, so you might as well look at that species. Now, for that, this is the map of biodiversity, global biodiversity map. We have 36 biodiversity hotspots globally on Earth, and there are three characteristics of this. One is high endemic species. So that means that when an area has at least 1,500 vascular plant species endemic, then it should be called that. Then they say, why? It doesn't listen to me anymore. All right. Okay. Okay. So the area should be under high threat. That means roughly about 70% should be intact, 30% would be gone. Then it should be of global significance. But I'm not concerned with that. I'm concerned. This is not working. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, look at this. This is our area of, it's to take off. Yeah, this is our area of operation actually. This is Himalaya, and this is, these are Hengduan mountains. This much of it is Tibet. So here, you can imagine that the proximity of so many global biodiversity hotspots, exchanges have been happening for millions of years. And each of these regions has enriched the other region. Okay? And particularly more pronounced during Ice Age. Okay? When a lot of pathways were created. In fact, this was the first intercontinental biological highway much before the Belt and Road Initiative was taken. It much precedes that. And also that not only the species but humans as well. Because when humans arrived from Africa and came down the west coast of India and then rose to east coast and then through all these Myanmar, Burma, other places and then they went up to China through. So this has, you can imagine that this region has played an important role. Because at that point of time, humans couldn't have gone up because it was Ice Age. So the only way they could have gone down is across. And if India was not there, this bridge would not have been there. If India was not there, they could have never crossed over to Southeast Asia. Not possible. So therefore, this is the first, I call it first intercontinental even this is not working now. Okay, I think this is... Okay, this is my area of work. Again, I'm showing you that why does this fall in the biodiversity important zone, like you can see here. It's not behaving at all. It's automatically some, what's... Yeah, I'm doing this, then it goes automatically. Anyway, so you can see that 3,000 in Tibet there are 3,700 plant species. These are endemic, so I don't want to get into that. So all right, just see. Okay, so look at this again. I'm sorry, Peter, you will have to bear with me. Rhododendrons. There are about 600 species, 600 plus. Some people say about 700, 800 species in this entire region. Okay, and entire Europe has 5 species. Okay, so we have over 90% of poppy species, and of those, largely have been taken by Ludlow and Sheriff on donkey loads to Europe. They are now in European gardens. But okay. Now, what is my tryst with the species distribution patterns? Actually, this is a personal story, but I was an undergrad at that point of time. My teacher had, I will show you his picture later, he had employed me to do typing. That time there were typewriters, okay? So typing and putting 9 volumes of Bird, Salim Ali's book, okay, or birds. So I was, my aim was to, my job was to type the names of the species and also put their elevation, minimum elevation and maximum elevation. Anyway, to cut the long story short, we had a colleague. He was a civil engineer by training, and IITian. He had been hired by Professor Kumar for building a turbine for his high altitude lab, because there was no light that time. So they made a turbine, and because it was to power his microscope. His material used to get bad in summer heat of Delhi. So he was, so in any case, so one day he came came up with a paper showing me that, look at this, look. I didn't understand. Undergrad student, hardly out of school, what do you understand? A dot matrix printer, and then he sort of traced it on butter paper, and he showed, wow. So there, I said, what does this mean? He said, it seems that a large number of species are at these elevations. They are not at low, they are not at high. Anyway, forgot about it. So this is kind of an amphora kind of distribution there. This is Yogesh in his working on his lathe in lab while making turbine. So at that point of time, we had no idea. This was 1985. At that point of time, we had no idea that Rappaport had published a paper in 1990. Stevens had published a paper in 1992, and Colwell subsequently in Colwell and Lees in 2000. But what we did was that after I sort of after I had finished cutting my teeth in research, I started working on some projects, and I repeatedly found these patterns in butterflies, in plants, and true data. And at that point of time, I entered NUS. And I meet this gentleman who unfortunately is not with us, one of very dear colleagues, Navjot Sori. One day, we had this, we used to go for lunch together, and after lunch we had tea in his room, in his lab. So, his very famous student, Lianpin, used to be that time, I think he was a graduate student. He said that I don't understand all these, I don't work on this, I don't understand this, but there is one person who is visiting my lab called Rob Colwell, so why don't we show it to him? Because he is interested in these patterns, that how species are, because species cannot be everywhere. There has to be a pattern to these species presence. Then Rob Colwell had suggested at that point of time that there is a geometric constraint, because they thought that Earth is a bounded domain, and the maximum number of species can only happen in middle. because the sides are too narrow. He simply was looking at it from mathematics point of view. I disagreed. I told him, no, that cannot be. It is possible that these could be zones of active speciation, because if more number of species have to be there, they must be born there. If you want to find where are most young, children, you need to go to gynae ward. You can't go to orthopedics department. So anyway, that was my idea. Initially, he said that these are real data. I said yes, these are real data. So he was very interested initially, but then Americans think they are the center of the world. So sorry, was it? Okay. So anyway, then nothing came out of it, but we didn't leave it at that. So we went on, we kept the gas on, or foot on the pedal, and published a series of papers, about 16 papers, and where we showed that all these species, they were actually, maximum species richness was in these middle domains here. Okay. But it was only the endemic species that were maximum there. Total number of species were not there. And therefore, the graphs that were shown, or the distribution pattern they were showing, was actually because larger number of these species were being, it was being skewed towards the upper regions by this. Okay. Then the most important thing which we found was that when we looked at these, how young were these families, we found that even the youngest families were placed in these domains. So that was a real thing. So we had some broad preliminary understanding by that time that endemic species richness was in that means mid peaks, elevational peaks. And then if these were zones of active speciation, then the answers may not lie in biology, because then it has to do something with the mid-elevation peaks. Mid-elevation peaks have nothing to do with biology. So we kept. Enter 2015-16. That takes me to Harvard University during a luncheon meeting, which was hosted by this gentleman called John Huth. He's a physicist. He was the director of science domain. He called all the STEM people who were there at that time, 8 or 10 of us, and he called us for a meeting, and without any preparation, we were not told, and John goes like, hey, each one of you you have 3 minutes, each one of you give me a wacky idea. Well, American professors can use that expression, we can't. Anyway, I was third or fourth from him. I was sitting somewhere here, fourth or fifth. So I said, thank God I will have at least 4 or 5 minutes to think. So anyway, when my turn came, I said something. Then at the end of 2 minutes, he said, Raj, can you tell me in one sentence? I said, all right. To begin with, rock-shaped life. Now, life is shaping the rock. And my turn went, the other person took over. All right. I had done nothing. I actually had gone back. I call it retrofitting. It was an idea that I had inherited from a teacher, Dr. Kumar, here he is, who in 1985 had suggested that actually river divides are responsible for creation of new species. So when one species is on this side of the divide, other species on the other, so new species are born like that. That's called divergence. I will not get into the detail. And I started working on this while I was still there. I started expanding on this idea and wrote a lot of stuff. Now, but why did he? I must. Yeah, one more, a little anecdote. 2:30, we had gone to our offices. At 3 o'clock, there's a knock on my door. And I see this gentleman on my door. I said, John, what are you doing here? He said, you said something, this rock shapes life and life shapes rock. Can you write it on 3 or 5 pages? I said, why? He said, we have this 21st Century Thinkers program. We can fund this. I said, but you told us that the last date has gone. He said, no, but for some last dates can be changed. I said, you mean Harvard has backdoor admissions? He said, yeah, you can say it like that. So he said, but you have 2 days. 48 hours, write this proposal, 3 to 5, and do whatever you bring it to me. Anyway, I wrote. They got about 120 odd proposals. They funded 11 of them. Mine was number 2. And of course, so I got another 11 people. Vicky Royden, who is here, she unfortunately fell ill. She couldn't. So 10 of us, one of them my postdoc student at that point of time. So we assembled at Harvard, and for 5 days, look at, just remember this name. He wasn't my invitee, he was my co-investigator's invitee, and in all, these two, by the way, are both fellows of Royal Society. So he said, Raj, we should have him. He has a lot of interest in that place. I said, all right, we call him. That was my first mistake. Sin. Okay. So anyway, we presented the same thing that, we are repeatedly getting this. Why is it happening? But by the time we had digital elevation models, and we were looking at what is happening exactly between these regions where we have maximum number of species. Why? Actually, it shouldn't happen because it becomes cold. Why should more species be born in cold weathers, inclement weathers, where, the growing period is very short, 2 to 3 months. So we looked at these, digital elevation models, and we were looking at the geographic area of each of these. At 200-meter interval, we made these digital elevation models, and we found, then there was some surprise. Actually, these were the least geographic areas. That means in each mountain, maximum species are in places or in belts, elevational belts, which has least area, which went again against the biological concept that more the area, more the species. So why is it happening? So in any case, so I presented, of course, a kind of a cartoon model because I can't go back 55 million years. So this is how I presented it. And said that, well, these mountains, they are just like this. If you have visited a timber mill, you will see that, people push it from below. So when you push it from below, then it cuts faster. Same thing, So when a river cuts the mountain, it cuts it like the hot knife cuts butter. Absolutely. So they are very narrow. Glaciers are gentle. They create, so there are U-shaped. So these are V-shaped valleys and U-shaped valleys. But somehow they convert a plane surface into a jagged surface. So from a simple surface, which could have been possibly during prior to Miocene, it could have been like this, it became like this, and ultimately it became more and more jagged. So you had, there was extreme relief. Topography was dissected, completely dissected topography in the Himalaya. And we also presented that what is the evidence that, that monsoon had done something, because if there was more water, there would have been monsoon. What was happening, if you recall, I had said that there were 2 collisions. One was the hard collision, the soft collision between 20 to 25 million years ago. And we found that in eastern Himalaya, as you would see, that this is Poaceae, the grass family. It had diversified 130 species roughly. That means in a short period of about 10, 15 million years, we had new 135 species born. Okay, and in Western Himalaya, same thing, but slightly lesser, 117 new species. Okay. The fourth thing which we found was that in Eastern Himalaya there are not only is there higher and frequent speciation events. There is, you can see here, around 10 to 15 million, about 294 species, where there are 122 in. So Western Himalaya had less frequent And in this case, so there was more sporadic. And if you, I just want to do it quickly. So if you look at the cumulative speciation, that cumulative plant assembly, then you will see that in eastern Himalaya, there are very sharp, sharp fluctuations, but, adding up of species as compared to the western Himalaya. There are no quiescent periods. That means there is, as if there is no, it's not stopping. New species are being added at a very faster pace. Every 1 million year, there is a lot of species getting added to eastern Himalaya, new species. And in western Himalaya, there are these long periods of quiescence. Okay? So all right. So that means we wanted to see now what was happening exactly at these intervals. We said, wow. You see, 55 million year is the first time when it struck. Okay, so there was a evidence about now. Here it gets interesting. Between 20-25, can you see this? 20-25 million years was when the monsoon became extremely severe. It intensified because that was the second collision. Because now the wall was complete, and when the wall is complete, it did not let any clouds pass. So it got full blast, and we had more, thing going on. All right. So now, can you see this name? So my problem was that after I had presented that in 2016, and my second sin was that I accepted being Dean of Science at Delhi University. And in July 2020, we find the gentleman publishing a paper in Science, no less. More or less on the same. But anyway, I would not go beyond that. But they argued that there was co-eval relationship. That means that orogeny, which is mountain building, that orogeny, mountain building, and monsoon have direct correlation with speciation. So they were trying, and they sort of said that orogeny and monsoon had to be synchronous. To get that kind of result, they had to be synchronous. Monsoon had also to be synchronous throughout. And endemism also had to be uniform across because all the three regions, Hangduan, Tibet, and so that's the supposition they made. Anyway, we were only licking our wounds. The only thing you can look after you re-look at your data. I looked at their own data and I found that actually the silver bullet called monsoon, it must explain speciation, but it did not. There was no co-eval nature. You can see Tibet has 3 different rates of mountain building. Similarly, Himalaya has 3-4 different dates of, and monsoon has different dates. So South Indian summer monsoon, southeastern monsoon, they had different dates. So you cannot, have used same and paint it with the same brush, and as if they were responsible for speciation in the Himalayan region. So that anyway, this is what this is actually what is happening. You can see this is Hangduan, very high endemism. Eastern Himalaya, slightly less endemism. Central Himalaya, still less, and Western Himalaya, the least endemism. Anyway, these are the same old graphs. So what was the pre-final understanding which we had developed by that time is that elevational species richness, that means richness along the elevations, it was peaking at the mid levels, and they were also restricted to least geographic areas. Remember, that means the mountain tops, the high, or what we call them elevational area troughs. Okay, so there was maximum endemism found in these troughs, but we had to prove it. We can't just have one data and show that, well, it is. So we went on a search that whether the adjoining regions of Tibet and Hangduan have the same. Lo and behold, then in 2020, Haben Yu published this paper and showed that indeed there was these peaks of richness were maximum in the middle of the domain. They were neither in low domain nor that. Okay. And we, of course, looked at these, what we call them elevational area troughs, and we found that maximum peaks were in perfect congruence with these troughs. So you have maximum number of species in elevational belts which have the least geographic area. Okay. So we then went to propose an explanatory model because there is no synchrony. 10 minutes? Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. So, so I will start now cutting short. So we said that, well, the rains over a period of time and glaciers over a period of time had led to these kind of topography, and topography, because of the topography, species had got isolated and different, and therefore it's in perfect sync with ecological theories that if you keep species isolated over a period of time, they will become different species. Okay, and we also looked at, this was Professor Kumar's work in 1959. This slide was actually made in 1959. This was in his papers, and I photographed it. I scanned it. So, of course, I will just skip this part. So we suggested that orogeny, climate, speciation did not have any cause and effect relationship. They were not coeval. There was a phase gap, and therefore we could not establish any cause and effect relationship as Spicer and his colleagues or Ding et al. Had suggested. What we suggested was that it was merely the rains and the mountain building was merely coincidental. It just didn't matter that when it happened. In Hengduan it happened earlier. In Himalaya it happened later. In Tibetan region it happened 3 different times. It didn't matter. The idea was basically to have a different kind of a landform. Okay, and that was critical for species, and that's so we then therefore went on to prove that orogeny climate, it coincided with speciation, but with a phase gap. Endemism and new species gradients were explained for the first time, and this is the paper which was recently published in Alumni. Now the second, which I will, of course, birth is a difficult process. It's a long gestation period. Death will be short. Well, death has been happening in Himalaya. We looked at it. This is Sivapithecus, a famous, it's a frugivore, because when there was huge rains, when the monsoon intensified, a lot of sedimentation happened, a lot of carbon dioxide got trapped, and because trees like more carbon dioxide, and therefore the tree species went down. Most of the forests in the sub-Himalayan tracts were converted into grasslands. And another thing happened was C4, which is a different type of grass. So we had these frugivores going extinct. The relatives orangutan, they moved east and are now safely living in Malaysian archipelago. But from Indian subcontinent, they went away. We had more herbivores going on. So most of the species died. This is my work, which we found. Interestingly, we found that it was a perfect correlation. This is a beautiful graph which I like. Not that I have made it, but looks beautiful. So when you have dry periods, you have more pine forests. When you have wet period, then you have more oak forests. So perfect correlation. So this again shows a turnover of species. Species dying over a period of time, new species being born, old ones dying. This is work from. So they do not kill species, or individuals again do not die. It is the habitat that dies, or the habit that dies. Okay, so either habit or habitat they die, and then species go extinct. And species are merely some kind of puppets in evolutionary theater. They just, in fact, honestly telling you, species just don't matter. Tomorrow, if human beings are not there, nature cares 2 hoots for it. Okay, dinosaurs or something else may come in, some flowers may come in, or some other animal may come in. Okay, what is more recently, what is happening in the Himalaya is that this is the primary work which we did. We got lucky. We had an earlier data of 18th century, and then we redid this work, and we showed that a large number of species were moving north, okay, because they were finding it too hot at the elevations below. And as a result, what was happening was that the beautiful alpine meadows in the Himalaya were shrinking. There were more shrub flora getting into this. This is a model species. Anyway, we published a large number of papers on this as well. And these are the kind of species which live in these alpine meadows, which were once upon a time, which I showed you about 20 minutes back. They were born, are now dying. They are losing battle to temperature. With the losing battle, they are also creating problem for the first resource. So now people who would get grasses or fodder for their cattle, they have to go up now to harvest that food because they are not found at lower elevations. They have to go up. Similarly, this particular animal, this is yak. This is very, very critical because now not only is climate changing lives, but it is changing their livelihoods. This is kind of a pyramid because yaks eat only grasses. They don't eat other. Now that those grasses are no more there, now there are mostly shrubs there. They cannot eat woody elements, and therefore it's the life of a yak. And life of a yak is interlinked with that life at those elevations. So these are interlinked. So if yak goes extinct, we will have this entire culture getting extinct. Tibetan culture is likely to go extinct because if the yak goes extinct. This is one of my USP students in Little Nine. So the only thing that will be left for yaks to do this. So he thought it best to. So yeah. So okay. Now the last part of healing. Very interestingly, it was some kind of a jackpot. I said, what's so special about these elevations? These elevations, we were surprised that these elevations again, they were having the highest number of medicinal plants. What's happening? So I looked at the Ayurvedic preparations, most of these, okay? This is Artemis. So most of these, if you see, are found at these altitudes. Same elevations becoming very, very important. Same here in traditional Chinese medicine. Look at there. Same elevations. So we have entire traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda almost dependent on these elevations. Because there is no other healthcare system which has developed in those regions. So they still depend on this healthcare system. And not only do they depend, but also people far away from there depend on healthcare system. So you have, on one hand, this is the Chinese traditional medicine guy. This one is an Ayurveda guy. You would be surprised that 70% of new drugs still come from nature. And 25% of daily prescriptions. When a doctor writes the prescription, 25% of those drugs are from plants. They're not made in laboratory. So that's the kind of dependence. So that is why these elevations become extremely important. And that's why for the last decade or so, I have been trying to write as much as I could. This is an opinion piece in Nature. I get lucky with these people. So, yeah. So I wrote one in 2013, then another one in 2000. When there was nothing to do during COVID in 2020, I wrote a Nature paper. Yeah. But this is the recent one where I'm talking about conservation diplomacy as part of multilateral strategies for global peace and sustainability. If we have to push, rather than, you'd be surprised that 90% of the global biodiversity hotspots are zones of conflict, military conflict. 90% of global biodiversity hotspots are military conflict, and so is India and China. I have shown you what kind of turmoil 6,400 kilometers of travel for India took to meet Chinese. These both nations are squandering that. I will stop here. So I told you that sometimes magic happens. Best witchcraft is geometry. To the magician's mind, his ordinary acts and feats to thinking of mankind. That is Emily Dickinson for you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you very much. So we've covered a lot. We've covered, 40, 50 million years. We have covered 8,000 over meters and everything else in between. And as I told you, there is bound to be an Emily Dickinson poem somewhere. All right. Can we just open for questions, please? I think there are microphones if you would like to use. I think I forgot to say this. I think this session is being recorded. Am I right? So I think for the sake of the recording, if you could use the mic, I think that would be better. Thank you.
All right. Hello. Thank you for the very interesting talk. I was wondering because you shared about India crashing into mainland Asia and forming the Himalayan mountains and the impact that had on the biology of the Himalayas. But I was interested to know if the fauna of Southeast Asia that we see over here today from Sundaland and Indo-Burma has impacted the Himalayas, the Himalayan fauna in any way, and whether there's some migration that we see in the fossil record going up that way. Thank you.
Shall I? Okay, so there is a record of Felidae and one extinct cat family which has come from there to here. I do not know of any reverse migration. Now, I know for sure that up to 2009 or 10, we thought that since large number of Dipterocarpaceae is in Southeast Asia, and some paleobotanists in India thought that we had received Shorea robusta, which is a important salt dipterocarp from Southeast Asia, because largest number of species are found here. But recent evidence shows that actually India was carrying Dipterocarpaceae along with it since Gondwana. So this area, Southeast Asia, had not given us Dipterocarpaceae. In fact, we gave them Dipterocarpaceae, but they did brilliant. We had only a couple of species. They multiplied it by several fold. So this kind of bidirectional exchange is known in plants and animals.
Other questions? I wonder if I can sneak in a question while others are thinking. Raj, normally we think that, warm climate, tropical climate and all that, engenders growth and so on and so forth. But what you're showing is probably a little bit opposite of that, right? That is the high elevation where the temperature obviously is lower. So how do we understand this?
Yeah, this contradiction. Well, now when I was talking about it, I'm talking about a domain which starts from, let's say, 500 meters and goes up to biological domain, about 5,500 meters. Beyond that, there is no life. So within that domain, the species richness will peak at higher elevations. Now, if you are talking essentially of Earth as a whole, then the tropics have the highest diversity, which is also the middle of the domain. Poles and the middle of the domain.
I see.
Okay, for two reasons. For that, there is something called Rappaport's elevational effect. I don't want to go into, but briefly to say that, like if you stay in Singapore or Malaysia, he would know it. I have taught him in the USP class. So, there is no penalty. If you want, you can sleep under a bench. Okay? So you don't need to have a lot of quilts and jackets and sweaters and things like that. So because of short So you can have short ranges, and in short ranges it's almost like having 20. If you have smaller matches, then in a matchbox you can fit many. Okay, so since there is nobody is super specialization in these regions, and there's nothing is going to happen to you even if you are not specialized, you can live. So that's why you have large number of species in tropics. That's the reason. But something else operates at higher elevations, because there it is the geographic geographic barriers and gene barriers that operate there, and new species are created. Here something different happens.
Okay. So it's two separate mechanisms.
Correct.
Altogether.
Absolutely.
I got a little bit excited because what you're telling us is essentially that it is geometry, not geology. It's geometry that is driving speciation, right? It's not because it's in the middle range, but because in that range it's more likely for the jaggedness.
Correct.
And the jaggedness is geometry. Some of you may know that my PhD thesis is actually on geometry. Yeah, so I'm very excited to hear that it's actually geometry that is driving.
Yeah. The last slide of Emily Dickinson was about geometry. That's why, exactly. You see, as I said, I showed two things. These are called fluvo-glacial, thing. Fluvo is river, water or river, and glacial, of course, is glacial. So these two forces operate in the mountains, and both create, they transform the landscape, okay? Over a period of time, over millions of years, they keep on cutting. Actually, my first tryst with my teacher, when I went with him to Himalaya, I said, I see a lot of boulders down in the river, which I can see that boulders. But here we are driving so high on the side of our car. How are these boulders here? Who has brought these boulders and embedded them here? Then he looked at me, he said, no, river once upon a time was flowing here at this level. So river, as I said, is, cuts like the metaphor is that like a sharp knife cuts through butter. Whereas so because of these, so glaciated valleys, when you go higher up, also have more new species. But it is the river valleys, which Dr. Kumar had suggested, it is the river valleys that have the highest number of new species. New species are born there because they can become geographic barriers quickly between species. Within 1 million years, you can have a river going cutting across and then putting different species in different places.
So 1 million years is of course a short time. Yeah, and that's why humans are totally insignificant.
Okay, in a sense, whatever we see today in the Himalaya, honestly, they are post last glacial maximum. So the age of these beautiful flowers that I showed you, and this is still happening, is roughly around maximum. I'm not saying everything, but maximum is between 2 and 2.5 million years. And so far, so many papers I have seen, there is nothing against this. So their age is between 2 to 2.5 million years. So in next 2.5 million years, we have many more species of rhododendrons.
I once made a very innocuous remark. What is so beautiful about rhododendron? And I am regretting until today, and I think I will regret in the next 10 years as well.
Teachers have elephantine memory.
Lloyd, please.
I'll answer the question too. So being separated across different landmass is obviously one of the major mechanisms of speciation. And geometry is one way to achieve that.
Exactly.
Right? But another one, it will be separation by the oceans. Because I remember seeing the chart and I saw Madagascar is deep red, so obviously it's one of the big ones, right? So obviously that one probably is not because of geometry or because of the seas. It may be an unfair question, but I wonder have you? I wonder whether have you done the comparison, the degree to which like distance by sea compared to geometry? How do they work out?
Well, I haven't done that, but I can tell you the answer to the first part of this question, which is that these are called insular floras, okay, or island floras. And there is this, in fact, in this recent 2025 Journal of Biogeography paper, I am exactly saying same thing, that these, these elevational belts within Himalaya, 2,800 meters to 4,200 meters, these elevational belts are behaving like islands. So when you have an island, it cannot share its gene pool with something above. It cannot go because it is too cold, and there are different types of species. Below our forests, it cannot do anything. So they get marooned. And when you get marooned, you are likely to become a new species. Prof. Bunchuan, am I right? You must get...
We're so happy to see you here today. Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof. Raj. So I have to confess, I'm an engineer by profession, so I know nothing about plant, but despite that, I really enjoyed your talk. And the reason I'm here is because when I saw the email and the Himalaya, because I'm from Nepal, so anything Himalaya, I want to listen. So I have no technical question, but I think in the beginning of your talk, you started with, you said that your interest in this topic started because of your fight between your mother and your geography teacher, but we didn't get to hear that story, so I was just wondering if you could tell us that.
Okay. That story is in my book. Actually, I was a kid. We had these repeated earthquakes. They have entered geological history of Kashmir, Himalaya. These are called 1967, 68 Anantnag earthquakes. So I come from Anantnag district. And we then, of course, the government then said that you live in tents, don't live in your homes because, So I asked my mother that why do we get these earthquakes? I was really, really scared of earthquakes because we had a 3-storied house, as you could have seen, and it was summer, and during summers we used to live on the 3rd floor, and the 3rd floors would shake. Fortunately, they were mostly the wooden houses, wood and masonry. But still, I was very scared. So she said that no, actually, this earth, basically, it is. I don't know whether you know DT. Of course, you are from Nepal. You should know it. The Shiva has the bull. Okay, he rides the bull. So this earth is on the 2 horns of a bull, and when the bull gets tired, so it changes from one horn to another horn. So at that point of time, we get this. So fine. Then, when I came to 6th or 7th standard, and then this geography teacher tells us, how earthquakes come, and there is this problem, earth is like this, then there are these volcanoes, and naturally the geography teacher will tell us that story. Then I told my mother that, but you were lying. And then she said, no, he is lying. After some time I gave up because it just didn't matter. There were earthquakes, how they came about. Why should I convince my mother or my teacher of each other's thinking? So we live with these contradictions all our lives. I have no problem with that. As I said, I have not stopped loving my mother, neither my teachers. It's all right.
Hi, thank you for the very interesting presentation. My question is very, very speculative, and it might come across as very dumb, but I was wondering, since you talked about how the river creates a lot of speciation very quickly, and I thought about climate change and how a lot of things are flooding, creating islands, and also losing islands. And I think when we think about climate change and all these crises, we always think about extinctions. But when I heard you talk just now, I was thinking about whether or not in the millions, near million of years future ahead, this creates new opportunities for species. So maybe there are cockroach professors in like 5 million years time that will look at Anthropocene as, would they look at the Anthropocene as like, interestingly, massive extinction, but also massive boom in speciation? I would like to know your thoughts on that.
Well, let me tell you that this is the most profound question I have had so far. There's a paper, I'm forgetting, this paper came in Science somewhere between 2012-13. Now, this is about fragmentation by pondages. That means when large number of dams are there. When in a mountainous region you have large pondages, then these mountain tops become isolated. Okay, so there is water all around. This is one reservoir. And they found that speciation has happened in less than 500 years. In fact, 100 years they have found speciation. It's a remarkable work. I was surprised that artificial impoundment, creating artificial lakes, can have these small islands, but of course the extinction is as high, but speciation is equally high. So you are absolutely right. So it's not speculative. This has happened, and it has happened in front of this. If I'm not mistaken, this guy from Australia, Bill Lawrence. Look at Bill Lawrence's work. Okay, William Lawrence. If my memory is not failing me, so William Lawrence's work on these fragmented habitats in artificially made reservoirs.
Perhaps the last two questions.
Students, are there any students? They ask better questions.
That's a student.
Yeah. What did you think? What did you think? Of course he's a student.
Of course.
Yes, I am. So, Raj, earlier in the later part of your lecture, you shared that the medicinal plants are typically found in higher elevation at the environments, right? So is that an explanation why they appear there and they don't appear anywhere else?
Okay, come here. I can surmise, number one, at those elevations, because these species have been produced sui generis within the local climate, within the local soil, therefore they will have, there is something called co-evolutionary arms race going on in plants. Most of these medicinal plants, they have chemicals. Actually, we are nothing but a bundle of chemicals, okay? So these chemicals are produced in response to what? Arms race, so that others don't predate on them. This is a defense. It is a defense. So these are defense mechanisms. Okay? And therefore, if you are born in the same place, you are much more likely to be attacked by an animal which is born there, isn't it? So you will have all these, very high amount of volatile compounds in you. And I think humans must have, again, it's my surmise, they must have felt quite comfortable with indigenous plants. Because they belonged to them. They owned them. It's a question of owning. Okay? So they were familiar with them. They owned them. They were there. So the people were there, the plants were there. So they thought that it is better to use our plants rather than take a plant from somewhere. So possibly that is how the medicine might have developed. But the biochemical part is very clear that these areas develop very high chemistry. These are very chemical. Yeah, the real student.
Jason.
Former student also, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I first got to know you from your talk 2 years ago, actually, when you spoke of invasive species and...
And you still came here?
Yeah. I mean, I'm back for you, lah.
Bravo.
Okay, so back then you spoke of invasive species and their metaphor for racism, right? But here I'm asking about invasive...
I didn't use that word.
Oops, sorry.
I said xenophobia.
Oh, sorry. Yes, my bad. Okay. Yeah, but for that, right, I'd like to ask, with the number of ecological niches in the Himalaya, right, would you say that the resilience of the Himalaya to invasive species would be higher, considering that there would be more opportunities for them to outspeciate these invasive species? Because, I mean, I'm intrigued about it, yeah.
Lovely. I wish this never ended, but it has to end. You know what? In Himalaya, I've written in one of my papers, actually the niches are so specialized that if you go 2 meters beyond, you might tread on somebody's toes. Their homes are very limited. That's why they can pack so much. Okay? Now about invasive species, actually, there is so much going on about invasive species. I did I looked at analysis. I'm at RC4. I cannot escape data analysis. So, and I saw that there is something called 10's rule. That if 100 species are introduced from any place to any geography, out of that only 10 will survive. Out of those 10, only one, that means 10%, only 10% of 10, which is one, that will become invasive. So in any case, invasives do not create as much havoc as people generally scare us. It's okay. But for Himalaya, there is another dimension to it. Invasion can happen from where? You can't bring a Singaporean species or a Himalayan species to go and occupy Himalaya because there is something called environmental filtering. It can't survive there. It has to come only from a similar habitat across. And let me tell you that once upon a time, on another my bioscience paper, where I have argued actually that exactly happened 25 million years ago, that we got species, they were invasive species from these areas. Hangdoan Mountains, Tibet and all that. And they ended up in Himalaya. But then they diversified into its own species. So a large number of species may start as invasive species. Okay? But it has to come through environmental filtering. It can't happen before that. Thank you. Okay.
Yes, please. Last question. Thank you.
Yep.
Oh no, I hope I live up to that standard of being the last question. But firstly, thank you so much. I only heard about your talk very recently, and yet I'm really glad I got the chance to come down because it was a really interesting talk, especially since I've been learning about speciation recently. So my question is, I heard recently that the Himalayas is shrinking. So how might this shrinking Himalayas affect these speciations that you have been talking about, especially of all these useful plants that are very useful for Ayurveda? Since the jagged zone and then hence those specific niches would be now at a lower altitude over time, would they then also compete with other organisms which have specialized to that area? And so, yeah, how might this affect? Thank you.
Okay, I didn't get exactly what you mean by shrinking, but if you mean habitats are shrinking, that's a different. But if you're saying that the mountain is shrinking, then that is okay. So there is a phenomena called isostasy in geology, in geological literature. That means when as I said in the beginning, that Himalaya still is rising about 1.52 centimeters a year. So it's in fact increasing. So if you now measure, there is this guy at Yale, a young graduate student who has come out with a new parameter of measuring mountains, actually, a completely different parameter. So it might, the Mount Everest may be more than 8,000 plus meters, 8,233 meters, it may be more. It is rising, but at the same time, then geography also takes over. There is something, you know, in mountains, as I jokingly tell my friends, that everything wants to come down. That's the nature of G, gravity. So it rolls down. And also to balance. So that is what is called isostasy. So in isostasy, yes, it rises, but then through processes of denudation and definition, it deforms, comes down, all that. Yes. So these are simultaneously going on. So the tectonic forces are pushing you up, and the denudational forces are bringing you down, and it balances somewhere. If that answers your question.
Is there some projection how high Himalaya will eventually reach?
I cannot hazard a guess.
There's no such projection.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Not to my knowledge. I can't say that.
Yeah. But it's definitely growing.
Yes.
As of
yeah.
now.
I said that 2 centimeters.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful.
That's why we keep on getting earthquakes.
Yeah. On that message of growth, I think it's a good time to end this. I mean, we should go on and on, but we need to end by 8:30. You have heard from Raj, and you would think that he has a very thick cushion of laurels to rest on, but I can tell you that he is not resting. I happen to know that he has 4 books in the making.
2 currently, but
in my head there are 4. Yeah, no. One is a trilogy.
One is,
and then the other one. Correct. Yeah, so 4 books in the making. Yeah, so we hope that... Wonderful. Yeah, and then we hope that he will be able to come back here to give another public lecture next year. So let's put our hands together and thank Raj Pandit.
Thank you.
Can I also call out, there are 2 people in this room who have done all the hard work to put this together. Shu Hui and Hui Zi, please stand up. And finally, it's my pleasure to invite Prof. Loy Hui Chey to present a token to our speaker. Loy, please. Photo. Thank you, Raj. I should have said that this token was provided by NUS Alumni Relations. Thank you, Office of Alumni Relations. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We hope to see you again in another one of these. We have a tripartite partnership, which is going extremely well between NUS Alumni Relations, NUS College, and RC4. And we hope to make... please, when the next talk is announced, I hope you will come and support. What we aim to do is to create a brand name, right, of really eminent speakers to, come to give public lectures at NUS. Thank you, everyone. Good night.